To start creating the MarsCode molecular lab, the first thing you need to make sure of is that you're logged into your MarsCode account. If you're not signed in at this stage of the tutorial, then please watch lesson 1 of these tutorial videos so you learn how to sign up on MarsCode and get yourself signed in. So now we're going to start creating this MarsCode molecular lab, and the first thing we want to do is to create the project, but also make sure that you have this website open that you've already seen in this tutorial, which is the subscript generator, which basically just makes the numbers that you're going to need from 1 to 9 into subscript numbers that represents the number of atoms for the elements that the user would enter in the periodic table. You will see how we're going to use that. And also, I like to get this website open for colors, as I like to color the text of the console to make the console look pleasant and user-friendly. So you can go to the CodeHS website, just look at this link here, and you can get it and just get yourself in here. And then you can just open up the table of colors and just look at the table of colors, which are 256, so you can use them for your console. Now let's get started with creating this MarsCode molecular lab project. I'm going to click on the plus project sign, which basically means just creating the project. I'm going to select the template as Python, and the name is the MarsCode molecular lab. Okay. And then once you've done that, just click on create, and it's going to create that Python file for you. And then we can get started on the coding. So remember that we're going to be importing some libraries, but of course we have to install those libraries in the shell or terminal here so we can be able to use them. Now, once you have created your MarsCode program, the first thing you want to do is you can close the AI Assistant. Although the AI Assistant is a very important feature on MarsCode, which makes it so different yet so useful compared to other IDEs online, you can be able to get explanation for any part of your code, or even if you have a question, you can pose it to the AI and the AI just gives you instantaneous solutions and just, facts about your code. So I'm going to close it because we don't need it right now. I'm going to click on main.py, and the first thing you want to do is get rid of all this code that you have here. So just select it and get rid of it. If you select it and you can't get rid of it, just do like a refresh, like reload the page, and then try selecting it and getting rid of it. So that's just an example, because sometimes when I create programs, I can easily get rid of this code most of the time. But if you're having such a problem like what I was just having right now, then you can just select and get rid of it and just reload the page. Now, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to be importing those libraries that we are going to need. So I'm going to start by importing this elements library from elements. So you're going to write from elements, import elements, because we're going to need it so we can be able to get some of the chemical properties of the elements in the periodic table, which we'll use in this molecular lab. And remember that the objective of the molecular lab is to be able to find the molecular weights of chemical compounds. The next thing you want to do is also include this import statements that says import elements, and then it's just basically dot elements as elements. So again, it's part of the elements library. And then we also have to import the periodic table. So import periodic table as well. And these libraries, like I said, we're definitely going to have to install them in the terminal or shell, as you can see, because if you try running this program, it will give you an error because these libraries are not installed yet. We're also going to import the FPDF library because that would be a library that we're going to use to generate PDF document. So it's from FPDF import, and then this is FPDF with capitalized letters. And then we're going to import that Aspose.words library as well, because that's where we can download the result of what has been calculated for the user as either a PDF file or a doc file. You're also going to learn here how to be able to mask passwords, because we're going to have two sections for this program. One is going to be the administrative section where the admin can be able to log in with their username and password so they can find out how many users have been or have downloaded the results as in PDF as opposed to doc. So they're going to kind of like get statistics on which one was more famous or which one did users opt to more when they were downloading the result. Did they download it more as a PDF document or more as a docs document? So that whole extra thing in this program is just going to teach you how you can be able to mask password and how you can be able to validate or authenticate login details, which in this case is the administrator login details. So for the Aspose library, I'm just going to say import Aspose.words as AW, which we've already learned in our tutorial. There are some variables that we're going to need to declare here as well. We're going to need to declare a variable called count. And the reason we need this variable is basically just to check how many elements are present in the compound, because we don't want to allow so many elements in the compound. Let's say that we allow a maximum of just 3 elements in the compound that they want to find the molecular weight for. So that's why the count is there. Of course, you can opt to allow more elements if you want. Once you actually finish, by the time you finish this whole molecular lab, then you can see what you want to adjust in the program and make it even better. So I'm going to create this variable called join and join1. And now I think it's the best time to actually import these libraries by just installing them in pip. So if you go to here to your MarsCode icon, make sure you save this program so far. If you click on run, you're definitely going to be getting some errors because you don't have these libraries installed yet. As you can see, it doesn't recognize this FPDF. So what you can do is just do pip, for example, install. Let's start with the FPDF one. FPDF. And then just hit the enter button and it's just going to install that library for you so you don't get any errors. You can also do pip install. Let's do the periodic table one. So it's periodic elements, actually. Let's do that one first. So periodic, just make sure you spell it correctly. So periodic elements like this. And we've already seen this. Oh, I missed a C right there, so be careful. And then when you hit enter, it should be able to recognize and install the periodic elements for you. Then of course, you also need to install the periodic table as well. So periodic table, these libraries are definitely useful because you're going to need them. And as you can see, as I install it, that error disappears. So we've installed the periodic table and the periodic elements, and the FPDF library. So now let's do pip install periodic table, and let's install that one as well. So you hit enter, and then it will just install the library for you instantaneously. And then we're also going to install this Aspose.words as well because, we are going to need that as well. And if we don't install it in pip, it's not going to work. So we're going to say pip install Aspose and then words with a hyphen. And then it will just install that library for you as well because you're going to need it, as I've mentioned already. So it seems that we've installed every single thing. You might be getting some errors more on this section right here for import. Actually, I made a mistake here. Could you correct this really quickly? It's from PDF, import FPDF. So that was why you get an error. But now once all the libraries have been installed, you're now good to go and you wouldn't have any problems when you're actually going to run this program to test out what you've done. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this down. We've installed all libraries. You can save this program again and you should be good to go. When you do run it, you shouldn't be getting any errors. As you can see, I didn't get any errors now because all the libraries have been successfully installed. So now let's continue coding. So what we're going to do is also, I forgot to mention, we do need the library that we're going to use to mask the password. It's called PW input, and that's the library responsible for masking passwords. So you can actually put it as a comment here. So this library masks passwords. So that will be used for the administrator login, or you can say masks input. It doesn't necessarily have to be password. Now you notice that there's a yellow line under the PW input, which means you also have to install it. So you have to do a pip install PW input and then hit enter and you should be good to go. The library should be installed for you. And then that's pretty much it. That's all you need to do. Now I think we have all libraries installed. We're going to now create our list for subscript values because we're going to need these subscript values for the program so that the system can be able to detect what number of atoms the user is entering so it can properly calculate this molecular weight. Now, going to the website, we're going to put subscript values all the way to 10. And that means that they can have a compound that has a number of atoms all the way to 10 and not more than that, because that's what this program is intended to calculate. So I'm going to go put in my subscript value, just type in 1 here. I know this is a little bit frustrating in terms of the process, but if you can get a subscript value in the computer, go ahead and do so. I think, again, MarsCode is just the perfect IDE that just gives you all your solutions. You see what I just did there? The AI on MarsCode just gave me all the subscript values that I could possibly need, and I don't need to type them out individually, except 10, of course, that I would need, because I'm going to go all the way to 10 as the maximum number of atoms that this program can basically solve. But you can add more, it depends on you. Now we're going to create numbers, and this is just going to be a library that is referenced to the subscript values, and I'm going to explain that. Initially, when the person puts a chemical compound, so for example, if I put H2O, this is how it's going to look like. It doesn't have this as a subscript, right? The 2 is not a subscript value, so what I mean is it's not looking like this. It is looking like a number because that's how it just enters on the keyboard. So it doesn't look like this. It looks just like a number. So we're going to make the compiler, first of all, when the user enters the compound, the compiler is going to detect the number of, that means the number of atoms of that particular element. It's going to check if that number does exist in the numbers list, and if it does exist, then it's going to get the corresponding subscript value because it's going to display the compound in the correct form. So in this case, it will replace this and display it like this. That's what our program would do as well. So that's it for that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to move on to create this list. I'm going to call it C list or compound list. And this list is going to be very important because that's where we're going to be putting our elements. Like we're going to split the elements from the compound. Instead of like H2O, we would be splitting it and putting as H and then as 2 and then as O, because that would just help the compiler or the program that we're creating the system to be able to understand what we're supposed to find. For example, whenever we detect a letter, we're supposed to find the corresponding atomic mass of that letter, which is of that element in the periodic table. Whenever we detect a number, we're supposed to find, we're supposed to use that number to be able to multiply with the atomic mass of the element that precedes that number. And when we find a letter, again, the same thing, we're supposed to find the atomic mass and then pretty much add everything together to get the molecular weight. So that's exactly what we're creating the C list for. The next thing we're going to create is another variable called sum, and this variable is also very important because it's the one that actually calculates the molecular weight by adding up all the atomic mass and multiplying them where necessary with the number of atoms of those particular elements in the compound to add all together to find this molecular weight. So that's what the sum is going to be. Now we can start our program. So I like to start our program with main. I'll call this with the function, and I'll call this function main. And remember what I said is that this program is going to have 2 parts. One part for the administrator, who basically is just going to be able to detect and find out how many users have downloaded their output as a PDF or as a docs to know which one of those document outputs are more famous, and the user section, which is the one where users actually enter a chemical compound and they want to find the molecular weight for it. Now, one thing I like to do, which you'd already seen in the previous tutorial, is I definitely like to display my responses and my messages in nice colors just to make the console look interactive and fun. And I also like to use ASCII art. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it simple with the ASCII art in this one, but I am going to go and get colors. So I will copy this color code right here. And I just want to print a nice welcome message. You can also use emojis here. And I think emojis are some of the things that I'm going to explore and use in this program. So what you want to do is when you copy that color code, you want to delete everything before M and just look at the color that you want to display the text in and just choose that color. So I think I'm going to display my first text in the color 162. So I'm going to type in 162 here, and then I'm just going to print that welcome message. So I'm going to print and say, welcome to the MarsCode, and I'm just going to say molecular lab. Okay. And then I'm just going to say, you can say platform form just to add a little bit to it. And one thing I want to do, as I said, is I probably want to look for an emoji that is like a chemistry emoji, something that's science. So I'm going to go with science emoji. You can go search. This is optional. It's just something I want to do to make it even better. So there's so many emojis in here that I could use for science. So I think I'm gonna go with maybe this one. It looks good, or even this one. I wouldn't say that one. That one looks more like a lab, since we're not doing like lab. So we'll just put this one in. So you can put an emoji there. I think you can also, let me just try copying this one just to see if I can be able to insert. Yeah, you can insert an emoji like that. So yeah, you can print out emojis. It all depends on your design and how you want things to look like. So I'm just going to put this message, and I'm going to put like an, just a nice equal sign right there. Also, one of the libraries that I forgot to import was this time library, which we've used in our previous tutorial. And it is very important because I might want to give like time pauses in seconds between statements. And this is definitely one of the libraries that I'll need to use. So now I'm going to provide the user with two options. I'm going to print, something saying administrator or user. So number one option, I'm going to say admin. And number two option, I'm going to say, or I would like to use the full thing, so administrator. And then the second one, I will say user. So I'm going to print user as well. And then I'm just going to say choose one or select one. So I will print that in a different color. And I actually will get an emoji to, or you can do 3 as well, suggesting the AI suggests for me to put an exit. That's actually a good suggestion. You can also do that. And then I will just come down here and print a nice ASCII art over here and just get it to, to display, just something nice like that. And then I will give the user the chance to make a decision. So I'm going to say selection, and I'm creating a variable string input, and basically just making the user to select, please enter your selection. And I actually want to get that in a different color. So I'm going to go back here just before the selection variable. I'm going to print and get a different color. So what I will do is I will copy this color code thing here, and I will paste it over here, and I will go and search for a different color, obviously, that I want to use. And I'm going back to the color table, so I'm going to go with 190. So 190 will be my color of what this message is going to show, and the user has to kind of like choose which selection they want. Now, once the user chooses the selection, we have to print a message. Or even before that, we have to make sure that they're choosing 1, 2, or 3. So you can say while selection not in, and then you kind of give the options that they have to choose 1, 2, or 3. You're going to print that message saying your entry, incorrect entry. So I'm actually going to print put a color code here as well, and I'll go with a red color because that would just come out really nicely. So I'm going to go with 9, and then it will just print saying incorrect entry. Okay, I am going to put some cool emoji in here just so it looks nice, and then I'll say retry entering again. You can say incorrect entry and then give them the opportunity to re-enter again by just copying this part of selection, the same input, and pasting it down here, because that would allow them to re-enter. So this validation, remember, this technique is called data verification and validation, right? Because you want your system to take in the right data so it can produce the right output. So you want to have this data verification and data validation technique. Now, apart from that, now once you've come out of this while loop, because the while loop states if they don't enter anything that's not 1, 2, or 3, it's always going to tell them incorrect data, and then they have this opportunity to re-enter the correct data again. So that's kind of what's going to happen. And then I'll just print here another nice ASCII art. If they do enter the correct data, I'm just going to put it as a nice ASCII art that would print, again, similar to the other ones. Now, just before proceeding, I would like to go and find some emoji that represents admin. So you can actually search here. Just search on emoji. There's so many places you can search on. Something that's administrative that you can think of that could represent admin. I think I'm just going to copy this person who, this icon here, who I feel like represents an admin. And then you can just paste it in there just to make everything look nicer. And you can even search for user as well, and just, look for user as well to represent user. And I think I'm going to go with this icon and then just paste it in here. So it's just more about the aesthetics of how you display things. And exit, I think I'm going to look for like an X sign. You can even search exit, see if anything comes up. Yeah, so it's like an X sign, as I said, or even this door sign. It looks very cool. So you can actually put it right there as well. So it looks very nice and cool and in display as well. Now for the incorrect entry, I actually want to go with this X sign, which just means like, incorrect entry, so they can like enter properly. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, if they enter selection as administrative, right? That's the first one. Then we're going to ask them to enter the username and the password, right? This is very important because we need the username and password so we can validate if this person is actually an administrator or not. So we're going to have to do that. We're going to print a message or print, I will print again, and this is welcome admin. So we can ask them to enter username or password. So what I want to do is I'm definitely going to get the color code again, and I'm going to print that in here, and of course choose a different color that I want to use to display this message. And I think I'm going to go with 208 for this one. So 208, I'm going to say, so that's all we're going to do for the admin section, but we'll come back to it and we'll work more on it because I want to go to the user section to focus more on that for now, and then we'll come back to the admin section where we can finish it off because the admin section is quite shorter than the user section because the administrator, mostly what happens is that they just get to get the statistics of how many people downloaded the results as a PDF or as a docs, and that statistics is going to be displayed to them as a graph. So that's why I said I will come back to the administrator once we finish the user. But let us write this little thing here first before we go into the user section. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to say welcome administrator, even though they haven't like logged in yet. We are still going to just do a nice welcome message. And then we're going to ask them to enter password. So you notice I put that ASCII art again of equal sign. So we're going to ask them to enter username and password. So we're going to say string, create a username variable, input, and we're going to say, please enter your username. And this is how you're going to learn, because you've learned in this tutorial about text files. So you're going to learn how we can be able to validate entry or login entry using text files, assuming that this administrator is already part of the system. So this administrator should know the username and the password, and we need to check if that username and password that they're entering actually exist in the database of the system. And so we're going to use text files for this because you've learned about text files in this tutorial and you've learned what they are capable of doing, which is storing information. So we're going to use it to store the information, which in this case is the administrator username and the administrator password, so that we can be able to validate making sure that the administrator enters the correct username and password. So the next thing I've done is after saying please enter your username, I'm going to create that. Remember we imported that PW input library so we can be able to mask the password. Now this is how you mask the password. I'm going to create a password variable, and then using that library, I'm going to say pwinput.pwinput, and then of course in parentheses you will write down prompt, which is what question you want to ask the user, and the prompt is basically going to be please enter your password, and then you have to specify to the compiler what you want to mask your password with. So you can actually use any symbol on your computer to mask the password, which means when they actually enter the password, it's not going to show their password, what they're entering, but it's going to show that mask symbol. And in this case, you can see that I'm using an asterisk. That's going to be the mask symbol. You can even use an emoji. instead, and that's going to be the mask symbol. So it's not necessarily showing the password, but it's showing whatever symbol you've indicated to be the mask symbol. So right now, I'm just going to print the ASCII art again of that equal sign, which would come up once they have entered the username and password. Now, what's next to do, which I'm going to add as a comment, and we're not going to do now, as I mentioned, is the data verification or validation, or you can say the authentication of data. And this is checking to see that the username and password that they've entered does exist in the system in a text file that we're going to be creating. So essentially, that would be the database of the system, which checks to see if their username and password is valid as an administrator, so they can have access to be able to get the statistics of the system, which is basically based on how many users preferably download a PDF as opposed to docs to know which one's more popular. So this section, we're going to do it next. Later on, once we finish the user section. So I'm going to leave it blank and I'm going to keep it as a comment, but we're going to come down to it. So I'll just give a space. You can give 2 spaces down. And the next thing you want to do now is you want to be able to do the user part. So we're going to say elif selection equals to the user section, remember, is 2, and that's where the whole program's functionality actually starts, because that's where we start allowing the user to enter this chemical compound so they can be able to calculate the molecular weight. Now, what we're going to do, first of all, is we're going to tell the user what sort of chemical compounds can be entered in this program to calculate the molecular weight. So first of all, I'm going to welcome the user, and to do that, I'm actually going to copy this color code right here, the one that we've copied before, and I'm going to put it in a specific color again. So I'm going to take out this color code section. I'm going to write the color I want this message to be displayed in, and I think I'm going to try going with 3, just because that's a unique color I see there. And so, of course, I will print a message and say, same thing as I did with the administrator. I will just say, welcome user. And then, of course, we can give a time.sleep. This is where I would like to put my time.sleep for 1 second rest. And then I'll basically say, this molecular lab program, so just giving some instructions to the user saying that this lab program is intended to calculate the molecular weights of the following compounds, or of the compounds in the following format. So I'm going to write that message there. I'm going to say this molecular MarsCode molecular lab, okay, it's always important to explain, is designed to calculate the molecular weight, okay, and then the molecular weight of a chemical compound in the following format, sorry. And so they need to choose which format they want to be able to find the molecular weight for. And that's kind of the validation in this program. So we give them the option and say, okay, these are the type of chemical compounds we can calculate molecular weights for in the system. Which one of them would you like to find a molecular weight for? So we're going to give them examples, give them those type of compounds. And I'm just going to list them here. Print a compound like NO2, CrNO36. There are so many different ones that we accept. So like number 1, we can do NO2, but I would like to write it over here. NO2. Oh, but we could just need the 2 actually. So I can just get it from here. So I'm just going to write NO and then the 2 subscript value. You can just copy it again if you have it on your keyboard. This should be easy. You don't need to do anything, just put it on your keyboard. So it's going to be like that, this type of compound. And then we have another format of compound that we can accept as well. And that's number 2. It will be H2SO4. So I'm just going to do copy the 4 one, or even the suggestion of the AI actually might just give it to you because it knows what kind of chemical compound you're trying to put in. Another one that could work, could be calculated here, is a chemical compound in the format of Al2. So just one that has Al2 and then in parentheses CO3 3 or something like that. So in this kind of form. Okay, so this chemical compound can also have its molecular weight found using the system. And the fourth form, which I think would be the last form that we accept, would be something where we have Cr chromium 6 nitrate, so Cr, and then we have like an NO, and then we have like a 3,6. So yeah, this one's also going to be that type of format that is accepted to calculate the molecular weight for in this program. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put another the equal ASCII art and then say allow the user to make the selection for what type of chemical compound format are they trying to find the molecular weight for. So we're going to say create a variable called user selection, and then we're going to allow them to choose from above. So we're basically going to do a string and then input, and then we're going to ask them which chemical compound format do you choose? Which chemical compound format do you want to calculate the molecular weight of? You can also do that question in that format. And then here is where we can do the validation thing, as I've mentioned before, because it's really important at this point. You need to validate because you don't want them to enter any type of chemical compound, since this program is not designed to do any type of chemical compound, at least yet. But of course, you can modify it once you learn how to be able to find the molecular weight using Python programming language and from creating it from scratch by yourself. So here we're going to do some data verification and validation. So we're going to say if the user selection is not in, again, if they enter an option that does not exist, and remember we've given them 4 options to enter. So basically what you will do, and I just did this with the help of the AI on MarsCode, is just print the message saying incorrect entry and then allowing them again to enter which chemical compound format they would like to find the molecular weight of, and then just printing that ASCII art. So that is going to do the validation. Now, I'm going to say, since if they enter any one of those 4 is acceptable. So I'm going to say if user selection, so I'm going to do now the opposite of now if it's correct. If user selection in, if they enter any one of those 4, it is acceptable, and it will just basically start by asking them to enter the compound. So we're going to create a variable saying compound, and then we're going to say, please enter the chemical compound you would like to find molecular weight for, so string, and then we'll put an input. Oh, one more thing I would like to do, which I actually forgot to do, is I definitely want to put a color here. At this point, I want to print this in a different color, so I'm going to go back to the color section right here. I'm going to copy this text, and I'm going to paste it in here and change this color code to the color code that I want, of course. And looking at all these colors, I definitely am going to go with 33 because I think that color just looks nice. It's like a light blue. And here I'm going to ask them to please enter. So now I can type in the text. Please enter the chemical compound you would like to find the molecular weight for. So the chemical compound you would like to find the molecular weight for, okay? And then I'm just going to give like a space over here so they can type in the response. And then of course we have to validate and make sure that this chemical compound they're entering is actually correct. And we have to split the chemical compound into the separate elements and number of atoms so we can be able to find the respective atomic mass of each element, multiplying it by the correct number of atoms, especially when you have one like this one of number 3. This sort of chemical compound, as you can see, we have to split it into separate things. We have to split it into an Al first, and then we have to split it into 2, symbolizing the number of atoms of Al, and then we have to split it into C, which is the carbon, then of course the oxygen, and then we have to split it into 3 and 2 as well, because that would symbolize the number of atoms of this carbonate. And then, of course, the one that comes outside as well. So we have to multiply the number of atoms inside with the elements, but also multiply the number of atoms on the outside. So we have to make the compiler smart enough to know how to do this and to do this correctly. So now that we've printed and asked them to enter the chemical compounds to find the molecular weight for, now we're going to be doing the part that I told you where we detect if they are entering a chemical compound where the element is containing 2 letters or the element is containing 1 letter, and also to detect basically if the chemical compound, basically detecting where we have the brackets, where we have the opening closing brackets, where we have the numbers, and how we split them off and save them in the C list that we created at the top here, so that the computer can be able to correctly calculate the molecular weight later on. So just before doing that, I'm gonna come back here, but I want us to test this program, and so I would like us to do just the part of the elif for the exit, which was option 3, if you remembered. That was like the selection, option 3, which was the exit. So now we're just gonna do that part, and I just want to test this program. It is a good thing to test your program at the stage that you're on. So just before we continue with this if user selection in 1, 2, or 3, I would like to do this elif part to say if the selection is equal to 3, which means if they decide to exit, then of course we're going to come and print a nice message and thank them for using this MarsCode Molecular Lab platform. So I'm going to copy this color code here, and I'm going to paste it here and take out this color code option so I can put a different color. That's just because I like to change my colors. So I'm going to go with 28 here, which is a green color. And I'm just going to tell them, thank you for using the MarsCode. Thank you for using the MarsCode. And then, of course, we're going to say Molecular Lab platform. And then afterwards, we can do a time.sleep if you want. So time.sleep, you can wait for about a second. And then basically print, or you can just say exit. You can also print goodbye and exit, so that's also a good way to end. And then finally, if we want to test this program so far based on what we've done, because these are the 3 options we had, 1, 2, or 3, remember I would have to call this main function that I defined at the beginning, because that's how you get it to run. Since everything is inside of it, you have to call the main function at the very end. So I'm going to do main and then pretty much just run it. But of course, always remember, before you test anything, save your work first and then run the program. If you want to clear anything that you have already on this console area, just click on the trash icon or what it says kill, and then just run it again. Okay, so you can have like a clear output response. So look at how it starts for me, guys. It tells me please enter one of the selections. And let's say I enter 5. Like there's no 5th selection. So you can see that it's doing the data validation properly. So I have to enter 1 to 3. So let's say I enter 1. It says welcome administrator. I'm just going to put admin, as since we don't have a data validation verification inserted there yet. I'm just going to put anything, but most importantly, I want to show you the masking. You do see that when I was putting the information, it's masking my password. And that's exactly what we want to do, is just to mask that password for the administrator so it doesn't show. And then nothing happens after that because we haven't done anything in that part. Now, if I run it again, and this time I decide to select the user, it says welcome user, and then it gives me that information saying this MarsCode Molecular Lab is designed to calculate the molecular weight of a chemical compound in the following format. If I try to enter something that's different, it wouldn't accept. I need to enter 1, 2, 3, or 4. So if I enter 1, it then tells me to please enter my chemical compound. So if I enter something like Al2, right, and by the way, if you want to enter that subscript value, you can, I'm just going to close that. You just have to write it the way, like normally. You don't have to write a subscript value there. So I'm just putting in Al2 CO3, for example, right? And then I'm just going to hit enter. And nothing really happens because that's where we are right now. We haven't done anything from here. But if you run it again and choose option 3 this time, so let's see what happens. It just says thank you, and it does a goodbye, and then it basically ends the program. And that's exactly all what we've done so far. So now we're going to go back to our option of selection equals to for the user section, And we're going to continue from here in the compound section where we can now split this chemical compound into their separate elements and also separate symbols and number of atoms, because it is important to know and to indicate to the compiler which one of the part of the chemical compound they've entered is the element, which one's the number of atoms, because those are the main concerns to be able to calculate the correct molecular weight. So we're going to do that now.